In our last video, we basically made a new script called Cinematic and started collecting waypoints through our path. So you can see the path right here. We've got 5 waypoints, and let's go back here. So the next step, we filled the array with all of our different game objects. And the next step is to create a new function that's going to return the current waypoint. So if we have our camera following a waypoint, we always want to know sort of, well, what's the next waypoint to get to? So this particular video will just focus on making that function, and then the next video will bring it all together and work on the update function to get things really working. So the first thing we'll do is create a new function. We'll call it getNextWaypoint. So the job of getNextWaypoint is to go through our array and essentially return the current transform that we're interested in following. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we're not going outside of the bounds of our array. So for example, we've been keeping track of essentially how many waypoints we actually have with the current index variable. So we're going to use that as a check to make sure that we're not going outside of our bounds, because otherwise we're going to start returning things that are invalid places in memory. So we'll say if current index is greater than 0, and then inside here, otherwise, if it's not greater than 0, we're just going to return null. So we'll say else return null. And we'll use a null check later to decide whether or not we're done traversing our path. So in here, we're going to get the next waypoint and return it. And then we're going to update the current index so that it no longer points to that space in our array. So we'll create a new variable, and we'll call it next waypoint, and it's of type transform in this case, and we will set it equal to our waypoint's current index, and we'll actually say current index -1. And the reason why is because arrays are 0 based in this language. So basically, if current index is sitting at 5, the first valid spot is actually 4, because it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0 inclusive. So that's 5 different waypoints in there. So always be careful, because otherwise you'll be accessing, again, places in memory that don't belong to you, or at least that don't belong to our waypoint array. So that's enough, but that just gives us the game object if we access that. So we'll use the dot operator, and we'll ask for the transform of that particular object, because again, we said this was of type transform. The next thing we need to do is update our current index, and we can do it in longhand by saying current index equals current index -1, or we can use shorthand decrement operator, which I'll use, which is just two minus symbols. And we'll say current, whoops, I've got my video uploading, my previous video uploading, so okay, so we'll say minus current index, like that. And finally, we will return our next waypoint. So now if we call this function, we check to make sure our current index is greater than 0, which again just means that there are waypoints that we can get. We store it in a variable called next waypoint by accessing the transform off of the current index -1. So basically the current place that we're pointing to in our array. We decrement that by 1, and then we just return the next waypoint as a transform. So in the next video, we will write a little bit of update code, which will go through and it'll check to see if we have a waypoint. In fact, like before we do that, let's add a variable here. It'll be private variable, and we'll call it current waypoint, and it'll be of type transform. And so right after, in our start function, right after we've collected all of these different waypoints, we will actually call get next waypoint. So we'll say current waypoint equals get next waypoint. So basically, we're going to start right off the bat with a waypoint. We might not have one, so we'll check for null, but in this case, if everything goes according to plan, we will just start right off with a current waypoint, and we'll be trying to get close to that. And I'll see you in the next video where we wrap this stuff up.